Hello, and again, welcome to Bit Depth. I'm Santiago Ramones. Across from me is Megan.
Hi!
You've been on here before.
I have.
But for the sake of very deep thought that psychopaths causes...
Nah, that's nothing. That show's not deep at all.
We wanted to discuss it since you keep freaking out about it and have been telling me to watch it for a long time, and so I finally did. So
Hey, we're even though, because you were doing that with Steins Gate for a while.
yeah.
So, and you actually finished all of Psychopaths before I even finished all of Steins Gate, so...
Yeah, keep
You're the
up.
winner. Yeah, I know. I'm not on your level.
So first of all...
I'm gonna get crucified for that, by the way. The fact that I'm not caught up, but it's okay.
Well, first of all, spoilers for Psychopaths.
Oh, yeah. All of it? Okay, so should we, only talk... I mean, since we're talking about kind of in general, should we just go ahead and say all of it? Or should we only discuss season 1?
Let's do all of it since I watched all of it.
Yeah,
we both watched all of it.
So this is for all of it. I know a lot of people out there only watch season 1 or haven't watched season 2 or the movie. I mean, the spoilers for season 1 are more significant in my opinion, but just general warning, there will be spoilers for the whole franchise. So yeah. I'll try and still give maybe a spoiler alert thing. I don't know. Okay. Maybe not. Just this is your alert right now.
Yeah, just a whole podcast-wide spoiler alert.
Just in case one of us accidentally says something, we don't want to have to we don't want to be sued in court, okay?
Yeah. So, let's at least start with the premise of Psychopaths. What is the premise of Psychopaths?
Man, now that I'm put on the spot, I won't be able to explain this. So basically, it's a sci-fi dystopian story about a society that is so advanced that technology can now measure the physiological, psychological makeup of a person based on what they call the somatic scan, which is kind of it scans your body language, your physiological moods, things like that. I think even down to the just what it's going to try and predict what you can do and what your capacity is based on even something in the moment to tell if you're going to be a latent criminal or not to help better society. And it's dystopian because it has this peaceful appearance, but it's actually a very corrupt system. So it starts off and bases around essentially the police force within that. And the main heroine, Akane Tsunemori, is a rookie officer that's starting. So it starts there.
Yeah. And so one of the major points of view is that from her point of view, she's trying to help people rather than just stop criminals. So go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. She has a very different mindset. You can tell she was really born into the society and the system, but she still has a kind of what most people would consider naive mindset where she trusts the system, but she's also wholesome herself. So she doesn't like the idea of just killing because the system necessarily says so, even though she does want to trust it. Yeah. And you see that even in the first episode. So.
And even throughout the whole thing, correct me if I'm wrong, she never killed anyone.
No. Even whenever it was prime, she had all the reason in the world to, and it was a moment right there for her. She couldn't even kill the main guy, the main bad guy, that she had in her hands. She still took him in to be arrested, which I always thought was very interesting, and she has a very interesting conflict because of that.
Yeah, but I think it's really good to have that point of view, and then the other point of view, once she discovers what the system is something that I really disagree with.
Oh, really?
It doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
The point of view that she still holds to it?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. That's fair.
But, so first of all, if a system were to be implemented, I think that like the moral dilemma, first of all, is privacy.
No,
There is no privacy. And then second of all, it's like freedom to just be, I don't know, freedom to think.
Well, there's a problem where, I mean, there's perfectly good people that have negative thoughts or dark thoughts and like one of the podcasts I listened to, one of the hosts on there, Callie, brought up mental health and how that is not really something you control, but within the show itself, that's something that the Sybil system still holds against the person. If you're a mentally incapable person in that show, in that world, you're basically, like, it's a life sentence. You're basically a criminal already, even if you haven't done anything. Exactly. Just because a lot of that's like intrusive thoughts and, you know, things you can't control, but the system sees it as, oh, you're not a healthy person, so we're just going to rid you from society, which is a super dangerous mindset. So like you said, privacy, you wouldn't have, but then any sort of bad thought you have to constantly control.
And then I feel like one of the bigger points, and I'm like skipping along here in my notes.
No, yeah, you're fine.
Regarding that is the idea of redemption. So the enforcers, the latent criminals who work alongside the inspectors, even though they are latent criminals, they still try to help society in whatever way that they can, as opposed to just being stuck in like
a rehab.
Yeah, a mental institution. They're more willing to make that sacrifice and serve society in that way. And so in that way, they're able to redeem themselves per se, but they can still never come back from
and to
being a latent criminal.
To bounce off of that, I mean, there is no really redemption in society. It's all about, in this society, it's all about repression, really. You once you reach that level, you're pretty much gone. Like, you can't, even the people that come back from the rehab are probably very lucky to, and they're probably still put on like lock or anything. They never really specified that, I don't think. If people come back, but there's a huge like dark cloud of, if you go, you won't come back kind of thing. Like, you're constantly going to be like living there. So it's all about like repression. And even though the enforcers can kind of redeem themselves, they are basically just doing that so they can have a better life, quote unquote better life outside of it, but they're still kind of repressed.
But then there's also a whole lot of good things that come out of the Sybil system, which is like everyone has aptitude tests and puts them exactly where they're capable of being. And so the people who are like the biggest and smartest and brightest can do whatever they want, like Akane. And she was able to pick whatever she wanted. And she picked to be an inspector for whatever reason.
Well, her reasoning was she was the only one, I think, that scored the highest on that. So she felt like, well, maybe that's what I should do, even though it scared her kind of thing. Which is interesting to me because it's like, so you take the aptitude and you have an aptitude for it, but how many times have people taken aptitude tests and they went for that career and it was like, wait, I don't like this at all. So that brings up the question of even if you have the aptitude for something, is it really what you should do kind of thing. But I mean, how can you know unless you try?
But at the same time, the like
idea is
in there, you don't have a choice. Like,
that's what you have to do.
This is the only thing that you're able to do because you only scored this high. So you have to do this. And so there's a lack of freedom, but at the same time, it's like you're being put exactly where you need to be. So, like, you're benefiting society in the best way that you can, because that is the best way that you can, regardless of if you like it or not.
True. Because a lot of people pursue things they like, whether it benefits society or not, that's for sure. So, well, and it's also just, I look at it like, honestly, I mean, I want to be in a career that I'm happy in and that I enjoy doing, but at the same time, if I didn't have to worry about making that choice, and it wasn't like you're gonna, do whatever, it ended up being something that I excelled at, then I'd probably be happy not needing that worry about, well, is this what's right kind of thing. So in a way, it's like Sybil's like judgment is understandable.
Yeah.
So.
But then there's the people who like fall through the cracks and just kind of like skate by on, well, I'm just good enough for this, and then they just kind of like linger in the shadows. They never like step out or anything. They're never like excellent people, but it just allows society to sort of push them down, and that's how you get the crazier people.
Well, and if it was such a perfect system, then it shouldn't have anybody like that. That's what.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't have any. Then, like, even when she talks to her friends, they're like, "You got to do whatever you wanted to do, and I got stuck with this." And so it's like, even though it is where, and I think part of it, even though it's where they're needed, if it's not something that they chose and that they feel like, I guess, at peace with, then they're going to be like in turmoil over it a little bit, which probably is what festers and creates all the other problems. So to an extent, like, even if you're where you need to be, like, logically, it's probably not always the best in the end.
And then stuff like, I guess whenever you feel separated from society, whenever anyone, like, their hue is, or their psychopath is like just high enough to where like they might be soon, they have to seclude themselves from society. They have to like do everything that they can, and then by showing that to other people, by going like, oh, I have to go to like a mental institution, then you're suddenly like put off to the side even more.
Right. And I mean, it brings up a really good point about even just in that first episode. Like, I hate when they use rape and stuff as like a plot device, but it makes sense how they did it in the show in the first episode, because it shows that a victim of something can be equally as pushed down as society as the people that didn't get placed well in the job. And that's not that victim's fault at all. They were just put into this traumatic experience. But according to Sybil, they're not worth it anymore. So furthermore, it's like pushing them down. In society, we don't want to deal with victims of things. Just go away. It's messed up.
And to equate that to the real world, we have a tendency to not allow redemption as well. And so with people who are ex-convicts or people who have been homeless for a long time or jobless for a long time, people see that and go, well, I can't give you a job because you haven't worked. That catch-22 of things. Or I can't give you a job because you are an ex-convict. And so, like, you can't fit yourself back into society if you've already been pushed off to the side. And so ex-convicts can't get jobs, and homeless people can't get jobs, and so it's like, oh, well, you lazy bum, just get a job. And it's like, they can't, because they didn't have a job.
Just like, in a way, there's already traces of Sybil, like, in the real world, like, how that kind of ideology works. It's messed up.
Because then these people, like, a criminal who is an ex-convict can't find a job, but still needs money, well, then they get involved in drugs and gangs and stuff, because that's the only way that they are able to make money and survive. And so then they're chastised even more, and so they just keep falling down this well of trying to do better, but
not getting out
the system doesn't let them. And so in the same way, oh, look, I have a capacity for committing a crime, and so by having that capacity, it just gets higher and higher because society doesn't let me be better than that.
Right. God, it's messed up. It creates its own problem.
Yes.
Essentially. It's like, I mean, I had a metaphor, but I like lost it. It's it's essentially creating its own problem to where it's trying to fix it, but then because the way it's trying to fix it is just ignoring it and repressing it and continuing it worse.
And so then it just perpetuates its own problems. And so whenever Sybil, spoilers everywhere. Sybil
the whole thing.
collects criminally asymptomatic people.
It's a great term.
People who don't show signs of being latent criminals. And
regardless.
Yeah. And in some cases, even whenever they are committing crimes, they still, like, Sybil just stares them in the face and goes, I don't know.
Not there. It's essentially like sociopaths and like they just have a way of not being affected by anything. And, a lot of people theorize, maybe when the Sybil system started, it started with not criminals, because the people that started it probably were like, hey guys, let's get some serial killers and add them to this. No, they were probably started with like Mozart, Beethoven type people, like geniuses that are well like appreciated. But then as the system goes and goes and goes, it gets more and more kind of corrupt in a way to keep itself going. It has to add more of those crazy minds, which they're beautiful minds, but they're messed up at the same time.
And so something that I don't understand is like one of the problems that I have with the idea in general is that since Sybil is a hive mind of brains that can understand things, and that's how they together calculate all these things and run society in that way, it would make sense that whenever a character in the show is pointing the Dominator at someone who is committing a crime, Sybil, as a collective of people that understand how crime works, should go, hey, that's a crime. And even though that person's psychopath doesn't say so, I can see them committing a crime.
So you're saying, like, when Makishima is about to okay. Well, how I understood it works is, even though it's a collective hive, there's different minds taking over each time. So, I don't know if this is like a loophole or whatever, but it could have been like whatever mind was there at the same time, because they so badly wanted his brain, they didn't want to kill him.
Yeah, but like, what they could do is just, and that's the other thing that...
Which is why it's corrupt.
Yeah. Well, eventually Akane just starts talking to Sybil through the Dominator. More spoilers.
Yeah. They're long gone by now. Yes. They should know. Sorry, guys.
And starts talking to Sybil as a person. And so, if any person can identify, hey, look, this is a crime happening right here, then Sybil, as the system, as a collective of people, should be able to identify, hey, this is a crime. And even though I want that brain, maybe I could just knock him out.
Instead of, like, killing him?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. In the lovely, awful expanding, bloating explosion.
When that first happened, I was like, what am I watching? This is so gory. That's a good point. And part of me wonders if there's just more criminal minds than there are good ones. So the criminal minds partially could be thirsty for other criminals getting what they could have gotten, but then they're like, so kind of like a holier than thou, like, well, we're the better brain, but we still have this criminal mindset, so we're not gonna stop this. We're just gonna see this person be shot and blown up or whatever.
And then I think the other actual reason for that is more that Sybil has a set of laws, and so they're like, the law is if your psychopath is above this number, then you will be enforced.
Yep.
And so they follow their own law, even though, like, we are watching the crime happen. Oh, well, look, their psychopath isn't higher, so I can't do anything. Like, that makes sense, but it's also dumb.
That they did that? Yeah. It's it's not infallible. It's fallible. It's not perfect at all. And that's the kind of dramatic irony of it, is that they think it's a perfect system, but like, I love what Akane always says is the law can't protect people, people have to protect the law.
Yeah.
So it's the whole self-policing thing, which is
Yes.
essentially your ideal concept for the civil system, the criminal, even though it's, trying to word this, even though it's like a criminal act, it'll tell it to not kill the person, but to paralyze it or whatever. I mean, that's Akane's ideal too. Like, why can't, and that kind of shows up in season 2 a little bit when she tries to get the guy just under 300, so it's 1 point away from him being blown, but only if it's 299, then he's paralyzed. So, which I thought that was an interesting. That's her. That's the start of her trying to toy with this system. By using psychology.
Yeah, and so Akane wants to utilize redemption, whereas the civil system goes, well, you're already above. Goodbye.
Right.
Blown to smithereens.
It's very mathematical. Which is weird because a lot of the criminal minds and the brains in there are very psychological, philosophical, probably very brilliant minds in a lot of ways. I wouldn't think that they're strictly like logic.
Yeah.
But maybe collectively they think that's the only way it should be, but then they just end up messing it up.
Rules are rules.
Kinda.
Rules.
And it seems like, oh, well, that's the easy and less messy way. Which, my thing is, it's this shallow, like, petty thing. Like, I get the whole blow-up thing is for, like, shock factor, but that's not really practical to, like, just explode people. Like, I feel like there's a way that they could kill them more cleanly.
Well, I'm sure.
Don't take that out of context, please. But just, I know it's for shock factor, whatever.
Well, yeah.
Written by a guy that is all about, like, murdering.
It's still an anime.
Yeah.
But by killing people in this gruesome, gory, bloody way, anyone in the vicinity that sees that, automatically their psychopaths just skyrockets because it's like, this is the most traumatic thing I've ever seen.
Part of me thinks that maybe that might be the purpose is, oh, well, let's just affect all the people in the area so we're just slowly, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. But, I mean, the enforcers and inspectors have to even think about that. Like, that's why the inspectors are never told to do the dirty work or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
When they're just as capable, they have the Dominator, so...
Yeah.
Gross.
And something else is that I was talking to Sally about how morality is judged, and given that I've said this already on the podcast, let me do a fast version of it. There's intention-based morality, action-based morality, and result-based morality, from where judgment is deemed good or bad. With intention-based morality is, I intended to do a good thing, and so that's where you're judged, regardless of if the action itself is bad or if the result ends up being bad. There's action-based morality, which, regardless of the intention or the result, the actions themselves are judged as good or bad. And then there's result-based morality, where regardless of the intention or the action, it's only the results that matter. Law, at least in the United States, it seems, is more action-based. So regardless of if you intended to do a good or bad thing, or the result of the thing, you are still punished for the action. If you were caught speeding, regardless of if it ends up in a car wreck, because that's why the law is there in the first place, or if you even intended to be speeding, you still get a ticket if you are speeding.
Well, and that you can even go that to something as dramatic as murder. Like, if you made the actions to try and do it, whether your intention, quote unquote, was pure, or whether you ended up doing it, you're still charged for manslaughter, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're still charged for, like, wanting to do that action and planning it, yeah. That makes sense.
And so, it seems as though, like, Sybil can't decide whether or not, like, is it the intention or is it the action? Because we've seen that as the Dominator is staring Makishima in the face as he cuts a girl,
his psychopath goes lower.
Yeah.
The closer he gets, whenever he slices her neck, it's 0, which is, you never saw that in the show until then.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And so Sybil didn't determine then that the action itself was the law. it determined that just the psychopath itself is the law.
Yeah. The number. So what, like, if it could, how do you think it would have judged him based on intention, action, or result? Because his intention was trying to get Akane essentially to, like, think for herself and kill him.
Mm-hmm.
But, and then the action obviously is wrong, and then the result is obviously wrong. Or it could have been fine if she killed him instead of him killing her. Does that make sense?
It's actually more where the judgment was happening, as opposed to the action itself. It was more that it doesn't even judge on the action, it judges on the psychopaths.
Right. It's like literally down to the physiological somatic scan or whatever, which is not a way you should judge a person because, like, you know, the first episode showed the rape victim. I won't bring it up again, but it's like, can you really judge, like, a rape victim as equally as a criminal just because they're a victim to something horrendous? No. You know, it would have been interesting. I don't know if they did it. I mean, I've watched it like 5 times, but did they ever show Yuki's psychopaths while she was, like, about to get slit?
I don't remember.
I don't think they did. That would have been interesting to see, because hers probably would have been, like, late criminal status, you know? And then Makishima's like, I'm at, like, 20.
Yeah.
Hanging out.
So something that is important to the way that I think society should be structured, but it obviously causes a lot of disagreement, is the fact that, so I don't believe in free will. That I am not in control of the way that my environment causes me to make choices. So in the same way, a victim does not choose to become a latent criminal. That was thrust upon them.
Yeah.
And so
in that world, yeah.
Yeah.
By the law, yeah. Jeez.
And so they can't even choose for themselves how they're treated by society, regardless of if they follow all the rules, if they're a fine, upstanding individual. Something terrible can happen to a person, and therefore you are no longer considered necessary by society.
Right.
And so some people just like go farther down that hole and then become actual criminals and just like, well, I was a victim and I'll just do the same to everybody else.
Right.
Which happens in the real world. People who there's a correlation between people who are victims of sexual abuse and they tend to be perpetrators of sexual abuse in the future.
I also think part of it is, like you said, it was thrust upon them, but they also believe that that's only fair if they continue doing that to others to make up for the fact it happened to them, but also maybe depending on how early it is. I don't study mental health, but if it happened to them when they were young, maybe that's what they think the world's like, and they're like, well, someone did this to me, so. But it could be a skew of things. I'm just kind of throwing that out there, but anyway.
But I think that, so let's even take that idea that if someone thinks, well, the world is this way, and so I'm just going to continue making it that way.
Right.
That's a dissonance that I don't have room in my brain for.
I know. Because then it's like, well, then there's like a billion different kinds of worlds out there because everybody's living it their own way. Okay, I don't want to think about that either.
But what happens whenever, so in the second season, whenever the people in the clinic or the pharmacy, the crazy guy just holds everyone hostage.
The old guy, right?
Yeah. So then everyone in there, like, their psychopaths goes beyond redemption.
Well, and it shows that with all the enforcers from Division 2 being like, well, there's a bunch of latent criminals in there, so we're just going to shoot them through the wall.
Exactly.
And it's like they literally were going there to get medicine for their problems, and they're suddenly had it thrust upon them, so...
Yeah. And then anyone in the vicinity that gets to see all of these people exploded as they run outside looking for help.
I think that's the point when I was desensitized to that. I'm like, well, once you see it like 6 times in a row, you're good.
Yeah. But that's sort of exactly why the system, like, has just this giant problem, this gaping problem in going, well, we just judge you on your psychopaths regardless of crime, regardless of anything, just your psychopaths. Therefore, all of these people gone.
Even though it's literally just a moment of trauma that will probably still traumatize them, but in that second their somatic scan was taken, of course it's going to be crazy high.
Yeah.
But, you know, a couple hours from now, they're probably going to be a little bit more calm to where they're going to be fine.
Yeah.
The system doesn't think about that.
And then something else with, like, so, like you said, the people that Sybil takes in are beautiful minds, and they're like
that is used loosely.
Yes. But by the end of season 2, Sybil ends up replacing a lot of them, or just getting rid of a lot of them.
Well, I haven't watched season 2 as much as season 1. Isn't it essentially because Akane does the whole, like, the God paradox thing where she has it judge itself? And so then they're like, okay, we'll make corrections. And they, like, get rid of all, like, almost half of them.
So, what I understood from it, and
It got a little
I had
convoluted.
Yes, I had to, like...
It's like, what?
I had to take a step back and, like, go into the wiki and, like, read exactly what happened.
I think they explained it the best they could, but it got a little... And that's why a lot of people have a problem with season 2, just, like, for, like, a side technical fandom thing.
Yeah.
The season 1 was this nice self-contained story, but season 2 got really complex with ideas that didn't flesh out enough.
Yeah.
Which is why I think they need a little bit more. But in theory, it's there. It's essentially like, okay, it's trying to correct itself, but since it's acting as this world's god, it's like...
So
the paradox.
The God paradox is, like, God judges people. And God deems people, like, worthy or not worthy. But then, if God can judge himself, would he deem himself worthy or not worthy?
Yeah.
And so, if God can judge himself, he has to deem himself worthy. Right. But if God can't judge himself, then he doesn't have the jurisdiction to judge others.
He's not, like, the omnipotent. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there was something about even if he judges himself worthy... They connected it to something about, like, moving a boulder or something.
Oh, well, that is...
that.
It's a separate paradox, which is, can God make a boulder so big that he can't lift?
Move. That's what it was.
And so that paradox is, God is all-powerful. So God can do anything, can make a boulder that God cannot lift.
Yeah.
But if God makes a boulder... If there is a boulder that God cannot lift, then God is not omnipotent.
He can't do everything. Yeah.
He's not all-powerful because he can't lift this boulder.
Gotcha. Oh, and both of those paradoxes happened within the same frame, so I was just like...
Yeah.
Head exploding.
But the way that the show answered it, which was a simple way to answer its own convoluted thing, was basically man, I can't even remember the guy's name. Kirito.
Kirito, yeah, because I remember, like, Sword Art? What? Yeah. Sword Art, get out of my psychopaths.
Kirito wasn't able to be judged because
he wasn't even able to show up.
The Sybil system can only judge one person at a time, and Kirito is an amalgamation of different people.
Which that science is, we won't even touch on that. It's okay. I was able to suspend my disbelief. I'm like, okay, I'm so invested in this show. I'm just whatever. He's made up of 14 different people. I don't care. However that works.
But he couldn't be seen by Sybil because he was a combination of a bunch of different people. And so it brings up the God paradox, because if Sybil can't judge this person that is a group of different people, then Sybil can't judge itself, because Sybil itself is a group of different people. And
that's kind of what Akane, my bright, shining star, figured out. I was so proud of her. But yeah. And that's how they ended up doing it, right? Didn't they point the Dominator at Sybil?
Yeah, and so once Sybil was able to judge a group, it determined itself having a psychopath that was greater.
Way bad, like 400 or something like that. Yeah, it was bad.
And so it purged all of the people that made it that high, and then it was able to judge Kirito. And see his psychopaths is also incredibly high.
Which is weird. I guess it's just because of all the acts he committed, but he's made up of a bunch of children that died in a plane crash. That's not very fair.
Yeah.
But that world's not fair. So all those kids, at the time the plane was crashing, probably would have been killed anyway, because their psychopaths are crazy. It's ridiculous.
Yes. Something else that's one thing about the show that a lot of people look at and go, I can't.
Judging.
Yeah, well, yeah, the whole God paradox thing, and just not even.
But I think it's fascinating to me, which is why I didn't hate the second season, because it left me with questions, which I don't take that to mean it's a bad thing, but I want answers to it, so I hope they have more out there. I don't know, maybe not, but. Because it brings in such a huge paradox like that, and you're like, what? Which it answered, but, it's still kind of like...
It kind of, just walked around it.
Technically, how much did its answer really work? Because the movie, it's still a flawed system in the movie.
Yeah.
So... which you didn't like the movie. Anyway, continue what you're saying. Sorry.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, something else that I really didn't like about the second season is, I'm terrible with Japanese names.
The fact that Kogami was gone, me too.
That's fine.
I'm just kidding.
No, but the new girl.
Trigger.
I know. We're supposed to hate her guts.
You actually like a lot of people.
No. I
hate her.
Hate her,
and you don't like that. It was that obvious to hate her? Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's more that she doesn't make sense.
Did you know that she was one of the students from the school?
Yeah.
Okay. I actually didn't. I didn't make that connection right away for some reason until someone pointed out, and then I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. She's one of the girls from the weird private school.
Yeah. Who...
had her friends all die.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But what I didn't understand is, maybe it's just because I'm so rebellious against any system.
Rebel.
But it's more so that even in seeing the true horror of the system, she was more than willing to accept it for what it was. It makes sense from Akane's point of view, because she understood that the system was necessary.
So I'm glad they clarified that.
And she sought to improve the system, which she actually does. In small steps, but she does.
Well, and she challenges it constantly in a way that doesn't... Because, if she tried to do, I'm going to take you out, it's like, no, that's going to wreck society. She was smarter enough to think ahead. So...
but for someone to become fully subservient to a system, even though knowing how it works, doesn't make sense to me.
Right. Well, so can I jump off of that?
Go for it.
So what I think the show does really well is they show, like, they give you different characters that are affected by the system in different ways. So, like, Kogami was the detective that fell from it because his crime coefficient went crazy. And he became an enforcer. And Akane is like this perfect, mental beauty that is smart, but she's naive and she's trusting of the system, but she also becomes untrusting of it, but she wants to reshape it. So that's why she's kind of this ideal hero. Genoza was kind of a coin of the system who ended up being played by it, and then he ended up just kind of going the same route of Kogami. And I think Mika, I swear that's her name. I think it's Mika. I don't know. I hate her. But why I hate her is the same reason you do, because she lost a lot of friends because of this twisted serial killer within the system. And then she became part of it, but then she became so manipulated by it that she became not only a coin, but she was like, not even going to try to fight it.
Yeah.
And it's a kind of I think she's a well-written character because she's kind of pathetic in a way.
Yeah.
And she's so I think what she represents is she's terrified by it. So that's why she's controlled by it.
Yeah.
She doesn't, every time you see her, she's like eating all this cushy food. She's like on technology, even when she's doing research against that guy. And I think that's supposed to represent, she's comfortable in this cushy life, even though she's been affected by it. She's kind of selfishly taking it in. And
complacency within a system that's being oppressive to you.
That's why I hate her. When she's crying and clapping. Oh.
Yeah.
And the fact that she willingly, this whole thing is spoilers, but I'm still giving warnings. The fact that she willingly helped that guy kill Akane's grandma. I can't forgive her.
Yeah.
She's not a real character, she's not a real person, so I don't care. But I hate her character because of that. And she knows it's bad, but she continues to act that same way. And that's why that's what makes me mad is that, she'll probably, I wonder what her psychopath is, but that's never brought up because she's a coin of the system.
Yeah. And so at some point it just becomes that now she just serves the system regardless of what it says. Which is exactly what you don't want out of society that is supposed to grow and adapt and change. Akane is just rebellious enough to question the system, but not rebellious enough to burn it all to the ground. But a big problem in people is questioning the system and then not doing anything about it.
Or trying to burn it and then being crushed by it, and you're never there. Yeah.
Well, I would rather someone try to change things and be crushed by it, because it at least means that they tried to make things better.
When you were watching it, were you ever finding yourself rooting for Makishima?
No.
Really? Makes me question myself a little bit. Because at some points, even though he's awful, I'm like, he's actually really smart in what he's saying. And I kind of wanted him to do it, but then I know it would be bad, but it's kind of like, why not let him start it, the revolution or whatever? Because he was saying a lot of smart things.
Yes.
That's why it was kind of like, oh god.
I appreciated him because he referenced Philip K. Dick, and I was...
And he was a bookie.
Yeah. I had literally just finished reading Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep.
Yeah, and he mentions it.
Yeah, I was like, oh hey.
You're like, whoa, my man. He he's a nerd. Well, that whole show is a big love letter to Philip K. Dick and Orwell and
yes,
Gibson and all them.
Cyberpunk and all that junk. But
so good.
The thing about Makishima is that he wanted people to have their own will, to be able to do what they wanted to do without being oppressed by a system. But what he was doing is not necessarily freeing people.
Yeah.
He was making people do terrible things.
He was trying to give them free will, but in a way that was not good. The free will to kill somebody.
Yes.
Which, no, you shouldn't do that. Which is why he was such a crazy villain, because he's kind of like a puppet master to all these wicked people.
Yeah.
But then it's sad, kind of at the end. It's his whole monologue, he's just everyone's alone.
Yeah.
And you're kind of like, you feel kind of sad for him a little bit, but at the same time you don't, because he's awful. But that's why I like that show so much, is all the characters are so compelling. Because even though, like, I love Kogami, I hated him at the end because he killed somebody on his own terms. Which, even though you're kind of satisfied by it, you're like, are you really satisfied by it? Like, you're constantly going to be chasing him. So, did that really help? It's just fascinating.
And that sort of goes to the concept of redemption again, in that Kogami was so, like, bent on getting his revenge or, you know, redemption for his friend or whatever it ended up being for him, that he gave up any other values that made him a good or bad person and just became a tool for which to pursue vengeance through.
I know. Well, and I think, did you watch the English or the Japanese?
The subbed.
So you watched the Japanese? Because I think I actually liked how they subbed the last conversation between them. Because Makishima's like, so what are you going to do when I'm gone? Are you going to, like, find something to replace me? And Kogami's like, I don't know. And then he shoots him, and it's just kind of like, oh, that's such a huge sign where he's just like, he realizes that he doesn't have a ghost to chase now, and so he has to completely reset his life.
Yeah.
That's why he just pieces out.
Yeah.
I honestly can't blame him a little bit.
On Kogami.
Yes.
The movie is dumb.
Okay, tell me why you think it's dumb.
So
I'm glad you said the movie is dumb.
The entire, like, second season, it, like, throws hints of, like, Akane misses him, or, like, sort of sees him as this ideal of what a, like, good broken person is.
Well, I saw it more as she misses him, but she misses their partnership they had, because she, like, starts smoking, quote unquote, the cigarettes to try and, like, bring his presence back. So I think she just wanted him back as a mentor, because he kind of helped encourage her in a way that wasn't, like, babying her. He was kind of, like, always reminding her, like, what she was capable of and let her show herself for it.
Yeah.
But also was willing to protect her if he needed to.
Yeah, but it was also part of her duty to make sure that he didn't do anything worse.
Right, like, she also is probably also like, well, if he came back, he would be killed or in trouble, so...
Exactly.
It was probably just also melancholy.
So then, by the movie...
Okay.
It's just like, hey, remember this guy? We're just gonna, like, throw him back in here. Yay, like, we're gonna tie up these loose ends. And then they don't. They just...
Well, here's my theory about that, though. Why I think the movie was important, it will only be important if they have another season or another movie or something to completely tie up the story.
Yeah.
Because what I feel like they were trying to do is essentially continue his arc to go from, okay, you got your redemption, you killed your ghost, but you're still not satisfied. You have to do more. And because that whole time he became like this leader for this colony of people, rebels, Akane kept being like, you're kind of like Makishima in a way, but like you both have the same charisma to lead. I feel like they're trying to set up this like possibility that he comes back. This is probably too anime right now,
fine.
But he comes back to like help be the next attempt at like shutting down the system. But he could maybe be successful with it since he's worked within it before. Yeah. That's just a theory. I still think the movie's good though, just on its own. But I mean, I love everything about the series. I'm a little biased, but I see your point. A lot.
And then the movie was really only good for tackling the idea of power and extending power and control throughout the world. Which
was, for some reason, I was like thinking the whole world was like that. So when I realized, oh, it's only Japan, that was really cool. That was the movie. What the movie focused on was, oh, well, what if we gave it to somebody else? It's like, ooh, those collars are messed up, man.
And that's kind of the other thing. And so, like, in Japan, the, like, people who are latent criminals or need rehab or whatever are pushed down into the shadows of society, or they just get away from any scanners or whatever.
Right.
Whereas in the movie, these people are just put out in front. So, in one sense, in Japan, these people that are, like, abhorrent people just go into the shadows, and they're just hated in the shadows. Whereas in, I don't even know how to pronounce the weird acronym that they had for this country, but Southeast Asia Union.
Southeast Asia, yeah. It was weird.
Their floating ship was, instead of having the criminals or the latent criminals in the shadows, they just had them up front to be like, hey, look at this person. Let's all hate this person.
Because of what they were, like, they had that visual representation. Yes, that was interesting.
And so, in one sense, it's sort of like doing the German, like, wearing the Star of David.
That's a good, I haven't thought about that comparison before.
In order for society to go, look at this person, let's all hate this person.
Yeah, and, like, isn't there a point when she's like watching something from a pier and people get in a fight? And is it like two latent criminals that got in a fight?
No, it was a latent criminal and a non-latent criminal. And so the non-latent criminal basically instigated a fight and then like started the fight, but then once enforcement came in, was like, oh, hey, look, it's him. He's the one wearing the collar.
There's so much societal, like, implication with that. It's insane.
And so just showing, like, hey, we are the good people, and you're the bad people over there, and we're going to keep you over there.
Well, and I think that to further that concept with that whole military having hijacked their system where all of them are latent criminals, but they made it to where they weren't. It's the whole series of Psychopaths is all about illusion to me, and like, here's how it is on the surface, but really underneath it doesn't matter what it should be underneath, right? Because it's working, right? But no, underneath it's a bunch of brains that are a bunch of criminals, and then in the movie it's like, oh, underneath it's a bunch of people in the military that are running this. Sakuza, I think that's what it's called, are actually latent criminals, but you know, the peoples with the collars, the visual thing you see of the people with the collars, they're the wrong people. But wasn't that, like, decided upon when they were first given the technology?
Yes.
So it's like, how was it decided upon?
Well, so Sybil had said, like, we gave them access to the system and the scanners, and any way that they would enforce it was up to them.
Right, okay.
And so they didn't give the law enforcement enforcers... they just were like, here are the scanners, here's the system, so that you can scan people who are latent criminals, but you can do whatever you want with the criminals. That's up to you.
And that's when they came up with that collar thing, yeah. Oof.
And so as soon as their psychopaths goes higher than a certain, or their crime coefficient goes higher than a certain amount, then they're just immediately killed.
I'm like eating my words, because earlier I was like, there's got to be a cleaner way to do that. And that's exactly what it is, but it's almost more messed up.
Well, because then it takes away the idea of redemption even more. Because
it's not a person
in Japan, you at least had the opportunity to maybe hide and get better or seek help. Whereas there, it's like as soon as you get a collar on, as soon as you get above a certain number, you're dead.
Because at least in Japan, there was a person behind the Dominator. And if you had someone like Akane behind a Dominator, she would rather talk you off the cliff and get you paralyzed instead of just pulling the trigger, blowing you up. But yeah, I didn't think about that before. That's worse. The collars are worse.
Yeah.
Yikes.
There's no room for redemption.
No. Unless, I think there's still, like, the paralyzed versus exterminated. Like, I think if you go over 299 or whatever with the collar, you're killed. But I think it still paralyzes you. I don't think you just get killed. I think the guy that it showed, he got paralyzed by it, but
nah, it straight up killed him.
It killed him.
Yeah.
His thing went that high.
Yeah, it just killed him.
Jesus.
Psychopaths
is so messed up.
Even still, it doesn't like having a lethal dose of something is much better than being blown up.
I don't know. Being blown up, I feel like you don't feel it though. I don't know. Maybe
I don't think you feel a lethal dose.
True. Yeah. But what if they chose to not do a lethal injection because they can choose whatever they want?
Yeah.
They're a latent criminal. They can suffer.
I mean, they could do the same thing. They could just have the collar do the same thing the Dominator does. I guess.
True.
It's just a real big mess. People have to clean that up.
God, that's so gross. Yeah. Well, because they blow up from their neck. I think it's worse whenever they would shoot him and you'd see an arm.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh. The crazy guy with the avatars. They're chasing him down the hallway and they shoot his arm and it blows up, but he doesn't die. Right, yeah. I'm like, wow. How is he still alive?
Yeah. So,
gore.
Back to the movie though, it tackles this idea of expanding the system in a different context, and like you said, sort of having their own different application for it. Mm-hmm. So in Japan they did it this way, and here they do it this way. But then it's also just what is on the surface and what is on the bottom, which keeps consistent with the whole show, like you said. But it still doesn't do anything.
I mean, I would agree with you, but I'm also there's gonna be more, right? I'm annoyed with how it ended in a way of oh, I'm gonna have this big long monologue with you about why you shouldn't run or whatever. Remember? And she's talk. Yeah. And then at the very end, Kogami hears, it's oh, so-and-so got reelected. I'm just I really hope, that's what makes me hope that they're gonna maybe continue it. So it, please, don't just leave us with that. Because that's sad as the last thing.
Yeah.
Because it kind of does make you feel okay, there needs to be some sort of tie back somehow. But, I mean, I don't know. It's a movie.
Maybe it could. But at least at this point, they opened up loose ends even more.
But it was written by the same guy that wrote the first season. Mm-hmm. Second season was not written by that same guy. Mm. So, and a lot of people like the movie. I mean, so if they rate this first season a 10 out of 10, they'll rate season 2 not as high as a 7 maybe, and then they'll rate the movie 8 or 9 out of 10.
Yeah.
So I don't know. They may also just it's a higher quality production because it's a movie, and then Kogami comes back. Everybody missed him through season 2, so
a lot
of smoke and mirrors.
I accepted that he was gone.
I did too, actually.
I accepted that just well, it's fine. He's just off doing his own thing. He didn't show up in season 2. It's fine. Well,
and at first I was bummed, but then I was and that's why a lot of people hated season 2. They're oh, he was so cool in season 1. Why isn't he back? And you can talk to anybody from that group I'm in, and they will tell you that I'm a Kogami evangelist. But I was okay that he was gone in season 2 because it makes sense. He can't stay there, and he couldn't have helped because he would have been killed. So, but I thought it was smart, and they didn't pull their punch by taking him out of it because they're okay, he was a really popular character, but that doesn't make sense logically to keep him in, but we're still going to honor him in a certain way, which I really appreciated how they did that. Because a lot of writers don't want to do that. They don't want to kill off characters, and they don't want to take away the beloved characters. They want to keep milking the stuff that works.
Yeah.
So that's why I liked that the movie brought him back. In a way that was realistic, I guess. By having him be somewhere else.
Yeah. But then the point of bringing him back is to have him, do something or be a part of, like, the whole message at hand.
I really think it's...
Which he wasn't.
I really think it's building him up to be... Because that other group wanted him to be a part of their mercenary thing. Mm-hmm. So it's like... They're like, hey guys, if you didn't think about it before, he could be a potentially good leader for a revolution. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like maybe that's what the movie is trying to say. Because everyone looked up to him. But if they don't continue the series, I'll be very mad. Because it needs something.
Just no point.
It needs something, because you didn't get the completion of his arc at all. They reopened his arc, and they can't not complete it. I will be mad. I will write it myself. Actually, no, I won't do that.
Okay, so one last thing that I want to touch on. The idea of redemption is consistent throughout, and then there's the idea of duty.
Yes.
Everyone who wants to giggle at the word duty, get it out now, because I'm about to say it a lot.
Oh my god. Please don't. If you're listening to a podcast over Psychopaths, I hope you have a little bit more maturity there. Just saying.
But, so, I kind of considered it her duty to defend Sybil regardless of what she thought about it. Mm-hmm. But it was also her duty to help people regardless of what the civil system said. And all of the enforcers and the inspectors have their own sense of duty as well. And so, I mean, we called into question Slave Girl, because her name is long and I can't remember it. The girl who enjoys Sybil and does nothing to change it.
Oh, Mika. Right? Yeah. That's not her name, I'm sorry, but I don't care. Y'all can hate me later.
She considers it her duty to follow unquestioningly.
Stupid.
Kogami considered it his duty to get rid of Makishima.
His duty was to, like, I think himself and his friend. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Makishima's duty was to make sure that everybody has free will in the society and be free to do whatever messed up things that they want.
Genoza's duty was to the system.
Yes.
But then that got questioned.
Mm-hmm. Well, he was mostly looking out for himself in the first season.
Second season, he was almost a completely different character.
Yeah. Because he was like, well, I have to, I can only do these things, and if I do this thing, then, like, they're going to get mad at me, so I'm just not going to do anything about that, and you're going to have to work around it if you want, but I'm not responsible for that. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of like, I can't do anything about it, which is the exact type of boss that I hate. Mm-hmm. Like, I'd rather have a boss that is more like, screw the rules, I don't like you. And I was like, I am glad that you are so, like, outwardly not liking me, as opposed to just trying to help me, but actually not helping me at all because you have to follow the system to cover your own butt. Well,
and going into the depths of his character a little bit, like, I think it's another thing, everything in the show feels very purposeful, even down to the designs. Mm-hmm. So, like, Genoza wears glasses, and you're like, oh, it's an anime glasses character, whatever. But I looked more into it, and, like, a lot of times, symbolically, glasses within characters represent control. It's like a separation of you from your soul or whatever. Yeah. So anytime he has his, like, real raw moments, he's either taking off his glasses to clean, or at the very end, it's like he doesn't have them on at all. And then it's like, oh, you have my eyes or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then the rest of, from there on, he doesn't wear them anymore. Yeah. So that was kind of...
Then he gets a cool ponytail.
Yeah, he does get a cool ponytail. His design's really nice in the second season. And a cool cyborg arm. Yeah. Sorry, guys. You're already spoiled already. But it's like he kind of turns into his father in a way. Mm-hmm. So... Where was I going with that? Yeah, he was a coin, but then he wasn't.
Yeah. And so a lot of times what the show is trying to do is say that, like, your duty is to society more so than yourself. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Yeah.
JFK. And so...
Which, in theory, is not bad. No, I don't think the intention is bad. That's a good thing. With a messed up system,
yes,
it's bad. Yeah.
And so Akane is trying to help the society as a whole by changing the system. I think that Akane is fully capable, and this is just me, is fully capable of just destroying the whole thing and making something better.
Me too.
And so she could just be like, well, I'm just going to expose you, and then you can't, like, enforce anything on me because I'm criminally asymptomatic.
You think
so?
Akane is criminally asymptomatic?
Yeah.
I don't think she is. Remember, her hue was going up in season 2.
Yeah. But it went back down.
Well, right, but the criminally asymptomatic people, their hue never changed.
No, their hues changed.
Well, like, they never got... Hers actually
up.
got risky, though.
Yeah, but she never...
I don't think she's criminally asymptomatic. I feel like they would have really pushed on that more.
If anything, she just can't be
It's just harder...
She can't be considered...
Right.
Crazy
they
by
pushed her.
the system.
They pushed her to an extent. Then she calmed herself down by thinking of Kogami. Sorry.
I think it's just basically that she just can't be.
She's more like, I feel like she's a little bit more cool-headed in how she can control her emotion, maybe. But I wouldn't call her like Makishima levels of criminal asymptomatic.
No. But it's a different sort of thing,
right?
In that her psychopaths can't go higher,
right?
Than
like it would probably
150 is whenever you're late in criminal.
I think 150 is when you're late in criminal, and hers reached like 120 or 30. I think.
Yeah.
They're always like, Akane, your psychopath is gonna get bad, and she's like, shut up.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, but she could take over.
Yeah, she's fully capable of, like, come at me, bro. What are you gonna do? Enforce me? You can't. I
also wonder, if it ever came down to something like that, even if her hue could go up, she would be so confident at that point of knowing that it literally runs by that number that she would know that she would have peace that it wasn't going up at all. Does that make sense? So that's what would keep it from judging her. Break the system by using its rules against it.
Yeah. But that's exactly it. That she can destroy it and not be hurt by it. She can't be hurt by the system.
Yeah. I mean, she can be, but...
She's capable of not having her psychopaths increase greater than enforcement levels.
She can't be hurt by the system in the way the system judges hurt.
Yes. Because as we discussed earlier, the system does not care what things you are doing. It only cares about your psychopaths. And so Akane could literally, like, go down the elevator and start ripping brains out of boxes, and they would be like, you're good. Oh, yeah. But the reason why is because she knows the people she's exposing it to are not... They're all sorts of, like... fragile, so they're like, hey guys, the system's run by a bunch of brains. Yeah. I'm exposing it. Yes. We should be good. They're gonna be like, what? No. And yeah. So I don't know what it would take for her to reach that point to where she could overthrow it. By showing that she is capable of improving the system and improving society to the point to where they are capable of being beyond the system. Yeah. Beyond.
Dang it.
So I don't know. Maybe that's what like the third season could be.
Really hope they
if,
don't
like,
need more.
Kogami comes back, then like they together can work to reestablish the system.
I don't know how he can come back.
Well, because he had hopes for it to just reform and like, oh, cool, they're gonna vote and have like actual leadership, and then.
But how he can go back to Japan, I mean, because what's her face is still there. Actually, she's not. Just kidding. Oh, maybe he could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they can take over the world or whatever.
But no, I came across this thing the other day, and it was like for the finale of the first season, and it was like a voice recording between the voice actors for Akane and Kogami, and it was like a live dramatic reading, but it was like of their last conversation, and one of the things they say is like, I hope one day we can meet as ordinary people, not as inspector and enforcer or whatever. So it's basically like alluding to the fact that maybe one day they could like meet again as like you're not as people, you're not like a number in the system.
Yeah.
Sad. So that's another reason why I hope there's more, because they keep dropping hints of like, well, it's going to be completed.
Yeah.
I also am terrified they would fumble it.
Lastly, parallels to our own society.
All of it.
If Sybil in itself is supposedly perfect, we can see all the problems that are in it that we could improve upon as a society. I think it's unnecessary to scan people's psychological state, but more so to just educate people to the point to where they can either help themselves and calm themselves in the way that Akane does, or, create an environment where people don't become worse.
Right. I mean, to an extent that would work, but then there's always the environmental factors or mental health factors. Like, some people probably can't reach that level of understanding. But then that's when I feel like, along with self-policing and societal kind of policing itself, just society also helps its people more, instead of just ignoring them and pushing them down. So that's why I really like how she says the people protect the law. I mean, it's law enforcers are necessary, but sometimes I think it becomes too easy to be complacent on that, to where people stop policing themselves and stop policing each other. It's like that scene with the girl, with the guy with the helmet, and because he wasn't being scanned, he was just beating her, and no one knew what to do. Yeah. Because they didn't know that was wrong. Yeah. So, and there's some flaw to that, because like physiologically, if you see violence and blood, you're going to react. But that was a really interesting point of, they're so desensitized because everybody does everything for them. It should be perfect, that they don't know how to handle that, which is, I worry that's where society goes. Someone's screaming rape or fire, people start walking faster, instead of helping. So that's very real. Yeah. If people enforce the law or just follow the law, they're good laws. Then we don't have to worry about enforcing the law. If you just do what you should, right, then you don't have to worry about consequences. But that is the problem with just the individual, is what they think is good or bad or whatever, or what their intentions are. Yeah. Eventually, either we figure it out and go, cool, we are able of like adapting society in a way to where, not even necessarily like making it perfect, there is no perfect, but just being able to adapt in that way, in the way that Akane tries to do with Sybil. Or
everything burns down when we all die. Which,
yeah. I mean,
yeah.
it's got to be one or the other.
Yeah. I mean, previous societies in history have reached those points repeatedly, and so...
Reached the burning and dying point.
Yes.
Repeatedly.
Yes.
If it would have already reached the other point, then we would be having this conversation.
Yeah. But, you know, television allows us to introspect on our own society through a hypothetical society, which is why fiction is good.
Exactly. Makishima will tell you that too.
Yeah.
He reads all those books for a reason.
Yeah.
But also it messed him up a little bit, so don't do that.
Have anything else to add to that?
Probably why I like the show so much, and it's like my favorite anime just in general, is that it kind of, because of its themes and its messages and its stories and everything, like I think about it every day in a way, like some way, like it's very smart, well written, but also it keeps you questioning and asking questions and whatnot. So that's probably why it affected me so much. And just the characters were all... You said you had a problem with the characters feeling cliche or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I disagree. I felt like they were very far from cliche, but I also watch a lot of other anime where it's ridden with cliche tropes that like you would roll your eyes at. But That's So Psychopaths to me does not feel like that. But the main girl Akane, like, you know, is kind of like an ideal aspiration for me.
She's passed a lot of cliches.
Yeah, she has. Like, I mean, there was a point, like I said, you know, even though I loved Kogami, I hated him at one point. I hated Akane that she didn't save her friend. But at the same time, I realized that's kind of real. Like, I don't know what I would have done in that situation. So it really introduced, hey, characters can be really well written and like human, even in this very manufactured bad society. So that's why I liked it.
Cool.
But yeah. I could probably talk another 4 hours, but we're not going to do that.
Yeah. Megan?
Yes.
Where can we find your stuff if you want to put it out there for people to find it?
Pretty much everywhere. I'm Monarch Star. MONARCHSTAR. Usually one word. Sometimes separated by a dash. That's Instagram and Twitter for sure. Yeah. And then Facebook, I'm just Megan Murphy. Yeah. Whatever. Yeah. That's pretty much it.
And follow her, like, your photography page.
Oh, yeah. My photography page is still kind of under construction, which has been for a while. Even though I've been editing stuff. It's Lucid Star Photography. I just put star at the end of everything. It just helps me remember. Look, that's a catchy word.
But some good pictures there. Your Instagram. Some good pictures there.
I post art and photography and things.
Yeah. Solstice cosplay.
Yeah. That's the group me and Santiago and some of our friends are a part of. We dress up and do skits and cool stuff that you all should follow.
Yeah. Have hype for Tokyo and Tulsa.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure how soon this podcast might go up. It might be right about the time Tokyo and Tulsa goes up.
Oh, okay.
Or is there. Yeah.
Or have hype after it. I don't know.
Yeah. Or, you know, just find it on YouTube.
Get hype now.
It does happen after Tokyo and Tulsa.
Yeah, yeah.
It will be in the podcast description thing.
Have hype. That's just a life lesson.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. This was fun. I love talking about this.
I'm Santiago Ramones. You can find everything that I do on my website, santiagoramones.com. I make music and also do this podcast. You'll find my music on my website, and I'm trying to get an EP finished.
His stuff is really good.
Soon.
By the way, for all my people out there that I'm sharing this to on the club page, you need to check out his music.
Thank you.
Do it.
But yeah, if you listen to this podcast and you haven't told me that you listen to this podcast, I'd like to know. Let me know what you think about it, what you like about it, what you don't like about it. what you think I should be doing more of or less of. If you hate my voice or hate my laugh. I hate my laugh a little bit too. So
What?
it's just like
Who says I hate your laugh?
No, I hate my laugh.
But who would go to someone and be like, I hate your laugh? I'm like, that's awful. They're
podcast
They're
listeners.
laughing. That's fair. I mean, whatever.
I haven't gotten it yet, but I'd like to get anything.
Right.
Literally anything. People listen, apparently, and so I'd like to know.
Tell me what you think.
What you think. But yeah, I always end every podcast with my 3 things, which are love never fails, it's going to be okay, I might be wrong.